Hey everyone, this is Brenton,
And this is Mike.
and welcome to the first ever Radults Radbite.
Best of 2018. What we deem is rad. I think you could say that this is 2018.
It has been 2018. I definitely have a playlist called 2018 on my Spotify. Let's have a chat about music in general in 2018 before we get into this. I just want to give a huge shout out to all the musicians on planet Earth currently plying their trade, because you've all done such a fantastic job this year. I choose to highlight the positives. I'm not going to talk about any of the negatives, because music is subjective and my opinions don't mean fuck all unless they're the positive ones. The first record I'm going to reference is a record called All That Divides by a band called Black Peaks. The reason why I love it is that it combines so many of the different heavy music genres that I've grown up loving into one beautiful, fully realised vision that is a wholly original band. Mike, what's your first best record of 2018?
Everything Is Fine by Amigo the Devil. This guy is extremely talented in more ways than one. Not only is he an insane songwriter, the guy can play the hell out of instrument. Who's your number two? That sounds really wrong. What's your next album, Brenton?
My next record, shock horror everyone, I'm a massive fan of Melbourne band Pagan and their record Black Wash.
Funny you mentioned that. It's also on my top 5.
Who saw that coming?
I did.
The most unique album that has come out of the Australian underground or metal scene in years. It's a fresh voice, it's a fresh take on what is supposedly a tired old genre. Honestly, one of the most raw and genuine records released in 2018, and I fucking love it.
I would agree 100%. You know what? It's always a bonus when a band's local. To know that they're coming from, our backyard, our neighbourhood, it gives me the pride that maybe I shouldn't have since I'm not in the band, but I do anyway. Who do you have for number 3, Brenton?
I have Turnstile with the record Time and Space. Why do I like this record? Because I like heartfelt, genuine, hardcore punk rock music that wears its heart and its influences on its sleeve. What about you, Mike? What's number 3?
I have Infinite Games by the Black Queen. I thought that I would be a little bit biased with this band, knowing that it's fronted by Greg from the Dillinger Escape Plan. However, this band holds their own. You get Greg's falsetto that he has used in Dillinger songs. You get his cleans that he's used in Dillinger songs, and also with Killer Be Killed. Who do you have next, Brenton?
Next up on my list is a band called Spanish Love Songs and their record Schmaltz. I think that's how you pronounce it anyway. This is definitely one of the best records that's come out in anything resembling pop punk as a genre in the last decade or so. Nothing has made me feel as much as this record has made me feel this year.
I have the last one by Circles. My friend Ben fronts this band and has definitely shown his vocal abilities more than anything else that he's done in the past. It's a huge step up for the band, which were already great, and it's just catchy as fuck. What about you, Brenton? What's up last? Your very last one to choose from?
Last but not least, and most definitely not least, because I absolutely love this band, is Mama Zets with Knowing What You Know Now. This is the logical extension of that band's growth.
We have Rue from Hellions. This album shows the evolution that we've seen this band take on. You know what? It's becoming a lot more a softer side from Hellions. They're moving away from their gritty punk sort of side, and they're going towards a sound that they've made their own. I've enjoyed watching the journey that Hellions have been on, seeing the progression that this band's made. I think that it's a killer album by killer dudes too.
We're going to interrupt our listing of rad things from 2018 to play a minor little rad break, because we never get to play these ourselves. So let's do it. We are going to play Radults or Badults, but with a twist. And the twist is we're simply going to list our Radult and Badult of the year. So Mike, you're up first. Who is your Badult of the year?
For listeners that aren't in Australia, I'm going to mention our current Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, not so affectionately known as ScoMo. He is an utter piece of shit. I'm going to stop talking now because he doesn't deserve any sort of attention. Brenton, who is your Badult?
My bad old of the year also comes from the political spectrum, and look, I know it's cliche as hell to say this, but Donald Trump is my bad old of the year. I'm kind of tired of talking about it, but while he still has everybody's attention and he still has power, I'm going to continue to reaffirm that this is no one's idea of sound political leadership. This is no one's idea of a role model. That's all I'm going to say. I want my political leaders to be people that kids can grow up wanting to be. Now let's get back on the positive vibes that we usually run with here. Who is your rat out of the year?
It's probably no surprise to anyone that knows me, knows the love in my life, the band that is Every Time I Die. I'm going to single out a single member of that band, and that is Mr. Keith Buckley. The reason why I do this and why I mention him as the Radult for the year is not only can he be in a full-time touring band and be a father and a husband, but he also has time to write novels. And this gentleman continues to write solid gold. Releases a book called Watch, continues to show his intelligence and his talents all at once. If you're listening, check out Every Time I Die. Check out Keith Buckley's writing. Both Watch and Scale are phenomenal books. With you, Brenton, I want to know, who is your rattle?
My rattle of the year is a group of people and not a specific person. My rattle of the year comes off the back of my bad out of the year, and it is every one of those awesome kids in the United States that decided to take the power of political protest and went out on the streets and door to door and inspired people to have a think about the gun laws of the United States. I know I'm not an American, but I am a human being. And the fact is, I am way more offended by people getting shot up for no reason than I am the C word, for example. And I can't turn that off. So to those kids, for realizing the power that they have and the potential voting power that that represents as they get older, good on you. You are my Radults of the year. Keep it up and you can be the change the world needs.
Moving on, I want to know from you your top 5 films of 2018.
Sorry to Bother You is my favourite film of 2018. I'm not even going to say that these aren't in order. They are. Sorry to Bother You is my number 1 film of 2018. Most unique, progressive, and well thought out comedy in years. Makes a really telling political point while at the same time presenting a really funny set of circumstances. Ryan Reynolds made his return as Deadpool in Deadpool 2. I know it's not as good as Deadpool, theoretically, but I love it. Everything about this completely speaks to me. Everything from the way it's written, to the character's motivations, to the display of empathy that's in it. It's all extremely my shit. If I'm going to go to the movies and I'm going to watch something that doesn't challenge me as a person, then I want to be thoroughly entertained, and Deadpool definitely managed to do that.
Let's admit for a minute here, it's also because at one point in the movie he had little legs like us.
Yes, it was. I can definitely relate to that scene. I'm going with a teen film. My next choice is Love, Simon. I just think it was a really sweetly put together film with a very good message about love. Not even necessarily about acceptance and tolerance, though that is elements of it. It's just a love story. And I think it's fantastic we've got to the point where in 2018 we can present a film that is essentially of the same kind of genre as Ferris Bueller's Day Off or 16 Candles or something like that you would have watched on wet days at school. And we can have that featuring LGBTQ people. Like, that's amazing to me. And I love it. And I love the fact that a major studio made it and that it was a success. Next up, we've got Black Panther, which I adore. I knew very little about the source material going into this film, which made for a very different comic book movie experience for me. I think the story's solid. I think the casting's excellent. I think the special effects are great. I think every single person that worked on the movie told a very succinct and well put together story that sets itself up perfectly to segue off into a follow-up. And the last movie is Incredibles 2, which was the sequel to The Incredibles, and you don't really need to know much more else than that to enjoy the film. Incredibles is amazing, incredible even. Alright, Mike, take me through your top 5 films of 2018.
I'm going to start off with an absolute banger. I loved this more than any other movie that I saw. It was fun. It was insanely colourful and beautiful. That movie is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Anyone that hasn't seen it, long story short, the Peter Parker that you know is no more, and we have Miles Morales, who is known as the Ultimate Spider-Man, is how he's portrayed in comics. In this movie, he's the Spider-Man of his universe. We have the fact that not only is the movie colourful, it is artistic, it's beautiful. You've got a killer soundtrack that features so many well-known hip-hop artists, and they've made that soundtrack so that it is reminiscent of what Miles would be listening on his headphones while he goes to school and rides the bus. We have Black Klansman, the true life story of Ron Stallworth. Killer filmmaking in this. It is great. They've gone back. They've made it like this movie came out of the 70s. It is perfect. And read the book. The book is awesome. I have Halloween, the 2018 film, which brought back John Carpenter doing the soundtrack. And if that's not enough to make other people see this movie, I don't know what is. It brings back Laurie Strode, which is always a plus. Anyone can challenge me to say that Jamie Lee Curtis isn't an absolute badass in anything she's in, even down to Freaky Friday. It was everything that you need a Halloween movie to be. 100% just a beautiful tribute to the originals. We have the Netflix original film Annihilation, which stars Natalie Portman. It's a post-apocalyptic sort of story. It's a grim film. There's not necessarily a formula approach that they've done with this. My last film is one that I shared with Brenton, Incredibles 2. I guess the simplest way of saying this is it was a popcorn movie with heart. It's an easy watch that kids can enjoy. It's an easy watch that families and adults can enjoy. There's stuff for everyone in it. It's something that you can just sit and even half watch. It tells a story. The story, depending on how deep you look into it, is pretty touching. So yeah, that's my soft and sappy pick for the list, is The Incredibles 2, which is a great sequel, and we all know that most sequels suck.
Anyhow,
Rad Break, I want to know, what is your fad of 2018, Brenton?
I don't know if it's a 2018 fad or not, but I only started noticing it in 2018. Guys, the 90s were rad. Stop trying to make them happen again. You're trying to be nostalgic for an era in which you were not born, you did not grow up in, and you do not understand. There is nothing cool about bum bags. There is nothing cool about Fila track pants. There is nothing cool about Kappa snaplock pants. There is nothing and never has been anything cool about the majority of the fashion statements in the 90s. We looked like morons then, you look like morons now. Stop it.
You should know better from our mistake. I like it, but moving on, I want to know what your rad of 2018 is.
Also, people being obsessed with the 90s and bringing back 90s styles, because you know what was good in the 90s? Music. And you know what has been good in 2018 as a result of people taking reference points from the 90s? Music. So, both rad and fad is the concept of the 90s reboot. I'm never going to pretend that I'm not absolutely stoked on the fact that most of the bands coming out of the melodic hardcore scene sound like emo bands now from the 90s. That makes me very, very happy. They might not understand their reference points, but I do, and that's all that matters.
I think you're secretly happy that maybe you can either rock a bowl cut or a mullet in 2018.
I could probably be accused of having a mullet from time to time.
You know what?
Fad of 2018?
It's not necessarily like yours, it's not necessarily 2018, but it should have been the year that it stopped. I'm going to say memes. They're done. They're dusted. They're no longer anytime funny. They've all been done. You're no longer clever. And changing it, I'm not going to look at that picture of the lemonade stand and tell me to change your mind. Like, just fuck you if you post it. So yeah, memes. Like, just be done. They're no longer clever. Although, like, our Detective Pikachu one is fine.
And your rad of the year?
I'm going to say the Radults podcast.
Oh! Someone's into himself, but if you're not, no one else will be, so why not?
Well, that's it. My mum thinks I'm cool. She's never listened to the podcast, though. And I think that the Radults podcast has brought us closer as friends.
Yep, definitely.
And podcast hosts. And we've got to talk to extremely creative people that are definitely rad and definitely certified Radults. And it's just an opportunity that gives us yet another creative outlet because obviously our lives aren't busy enough.
Alright, so we're going to move on to our next category. Mike and I are going to have different categories to round things out. The category that Mike is going to be doing is one that I would consider him to be the foremost expert in, not just in this podcast, but in my friendship group as a whole. Mike is going to talk you through the best comic books of 2018.
My equal tied favourite comic book of all time came to its end this year after volume 25, issue 144, which means on average when a series comes out, it's monthly, you get 12 issues a year. That's a lot. That's a 10-year long comic there. So mad props to Invincible by Robert Kirkman, Ryan Ottley, and Corey Walker. It came to its end, rest in peace. It was insane to finish up with that, and there's nothing but respect for that. We had Sean Gordon Murphy's Batman White Knight, which tells a different side of the Joker and a different story of what could have happened. This is definitely what I would consider a more mature audience-based comic. It's not for kids. This 8-issue miniseries was a fun read that gave a different spin on a lot of things. We have Breathless from Black Mask Studios, which I think I can hold dear to my heart because I'm an asthmatic. This is brought to you by writer extraordinaire and hip-hop connoisseur Pat Shand. We have a much-loved favourite everyone will know. We saw the newest series of The Amazing Spider-Man come out this year. This features Nick Spencer on writing duties, and the thing that hooked me in, besides it being Spider-Man, is the fact that one of my favourite artists, Ryan Ottley from Invincible fame, this was the first series that he has done since that series finished. I get to see art that looks like Invincible, but it's Spider-Man. So it's great. It's been fun. It's brought back a lot of much-loved characters that we haven't seen in a little while, like the Lizard. So big up Dr. Connors. Last but not least is Cosmic Ghost Rider. This character started out in another series called Thanos. Was in a couple of issues of that. He got his own series, which was only 5 issues long. I do suspect that he will be coming back because he was extremely popular. Imagine Ghost Rider, but in space, because that's what you've got. Your top 5 of TV Brenton. Number 1.
Atlanta. I love this TV show. I love Donald Glover. I think it's a fantastic creative mind. I actually think he has one of the more interesting stories to tell too as an artist that's emerged in this social media obsessed timeline. And I think Atlanta is a really well put together show that takes risks that other shows wouldn't. It exposes someone from a very white cis male background to a very different upbringing in a very different culture, and does so in a way that makes it accessible. I think it touches everything that it needs to in terms of it can be comedic, it can be dramatic. It takes rapid left turns, which is something that I love about Mr. Robot, another show that I particularly love that unfortunately wasn't out this year. They'll just do an episode that seems completely disconnected from the rest of the season, but then at the very end there'll be the slightest little detail that actually hooks into the overall meaning of the whole show. And I just think it's really clever. Performances are great too, and Lakeith Stanfield's one of my favourite actors. The Good Place makes my list. I love this show. It's a Netflix property, I believe. It might be out on a network in the US, but I watch it on Netflix. One of the smartest mainstream comedies. It's come out in many years. I love the fact that it keeps changing its own rules, which are very enjoyable. It just does a great job of showing the hypocrisy of some elements of religion too, which is a very nice thing to get out of a major network comedy. Ted Danson with Wolves, man. Ted Danson with Wolves. My next one is Glow, also on Netflix. People who know me would be aware that I'm a massive pro wrestling fan.
No, you're not.
And that I love it for all the reasons that people tell me I shouldn't. And Glow is a really well put together dramatic TV show that shows you a very liberally interpreted version of what went down in the 80s in LA regarding Glow, the Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling.
Is that what it stands for?
Yes.
My mind is blown.
It's a very It's a very fun show. That's all I can say. However, you better like wrestling to enjoy the show I'm going to mention next. WWE NXT.
What does NXT stand for?
Next.
So, like you were going to mention NXT.
Yes. So, very much so. So NXT started out as a developmental territory for WWE. It's really grown into its own brand. The reason why I choose this over all other WWE programming or pro wrestling programming in 2018 is the fact that everything on this show is put together with meaning and purpose, and they really treat it like both a sports entertainment product, but also a TV show. So they've actually gone to the effort of writing depth into the characters and the feuds. They spent the vast majority of the first half of 2018 and most of the last half of 2017 building up a feud between Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano that was such an awesome blood feud that I felt compelled to take a detour on my holiday in the United States to Chicago just to see its ending in person. If you think that you won't like pro wrestling because you think it's all cartoon, I would say give WWE NXT a go. It's more of a gritty, realistic depiction of the industry and can be a hell of a lot of fun. Plus the crowd makes the show to an extent. The crowd there is so fucking into it. And last but not least on my TV of 2018 list is the comedy Barry. I think it's brilliant. I think Bill Hader is brilliant in it. If you're not familiar with the show, Barry, the premise of it is the guy was an assassin for a living and he's trying to get out of that role by becoming an actor. So he enrolls himself in an acting class and then tries to escape the world of being a professional assassin.
We've spilt it, we've dealt it, you now know that we've smelt it. It's our top 15 of 20 great teams. It's happened. Thank you for joining us for this. We're sorry at the same time.
Irrespective of when you're actually listening to this, I hope that you have had a fantastic holiday break. Please don't take for granted the people in your life. The people that surround you are what make life worthwhile, and they're the people that will support you when you start projects. I know that Mike and I have both had tremendous support from our friends getting this podcast up and running, and we feel that it's something that we're going to keep going for quite a long time. It's really enabled us to see the connection between dream and reality and how close those two things can be if you just have the confidence to do the thing.
Definitely do the thing.
You don't want to wish them a nice holidays?
If I have to. If you have pets and you're in Australia, remember to leave out water and food for those. It's going to get hot. Give them a pat for me, a scratch behind the ear as well.
What should the end be? What should the soundtrack be?
The end is the fact that, one, we're on iTunes. And Brenton seems to think that that's important. Please, is that uprate?
Rate us. 5 if you can.
Yeah, so 5 stars because we're obviously worth more than that, but that's all you can give. Please subscribe to us on whatever platforms that you stream on, be it Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean. Make sure to do that. If you could please share this podcast with your friends and family, anyone that you think are rad enough to handle Radults. So yeah, I guess, look, show us some love. Share this around. Give people your recommendation to listen to Radults. We are literally going to click stop with me saying one last thing before Brenton can change it. Everyone should go on to Spotify or your streaming program and listen to Catholic Guilt.